Thanks so much for hanging out with us here on NFL Betting Blitz. We're going to get you all set up for Super Wildcard Weekend games for Sunday and for Monday. Still 4 more of the 6 games that remain this week. But Eric, before we get into these games, I want to go back in time a little bit. And I also want to address a quick piece of news right now. We just got the word that Vrabel going to be the head coach for the Pats. Does this surprise you at all?
Totally surprises me.
Right.
The way I look at it was they passed you over last year for Mayo. Why are you going back there unless he's just got more money?
More control, maybe, right? Things like that. But yeah, it's weird because it makes sense for the Patriots. It just the logistics of it overall from last year to this year are a little bit strange. But I guess if you're Vrabel, right? Like if you're Vrabel, you're going to go where the best money is, the best situation. And I guess you've got a young quarterback and an organization that you maybe believe will get back to the top. But like you said, didn't really give you the chance last year when they could have.
Which was the weird thing. I don't know. Like, I thought I would have told them to F off. But, they are, when you kind of look at it, they do have a lot of money underneath the cap. And
a young QB that you and I both think is probably as impressive as any of the rookie quarterbacks last year, playing with a lot less around him.
Yeah. So, I mean, I get it. A top 3 pick. You're going to be able to get Campbell, the offensive lineman from LSU, or Hunter. So, I mean, you are in a good position, but just a weird – I thought he was never going to go back, but, he did, so –
So Vrabel will be coaching the New England Patriots next year. Yesterday's games. First game, Chargers, Texans. Man, that game. So the final score, 32-12. Texans dominate the second half. But Eric, you and I bet the Texans. We like the Texans in that spot. That game was closer than the final score might indicate because there was a couple really big swing plays in the game. There was one particular where it was 5 minutes to go in the first half, and the Texans were doing absolutely nothing. They could not move the ball on offense at all. They couldn't get any sort of a running game going, and the Chargers drove down, had to kick a field goal. The Texans turned the ball over. Chargers kicked the field goal. So twice they could have scored touchdowns. Instead, they only kicked field goals. So it's 6-0. It felt like it was 21-0 because Houston wasn't doing anything. There was one play where ball gets snapped, dropped, Stroud scrambling around. He looks like he's going to take a massive loss, and he throws a bomb down the field, and he hits Hutchinson for 34 yards. It's a 3rd and 16, and they pick up 34. And Eric, that was one of the biggest momentum swing plays I can remember in a football game. I mean, everything changed for Houston after that. Within about a minute, they're up 7-6, and you and I were probably feeling like, man, they played horrible, and we've actually got the lead right now. And they actually even went into the half up 10-6 after playing miserable for most of the first half. If you backed Houston at that point, you were feeling pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, they dominated that game, but they weren't able to take advantage of some short field situations. Very first play the Texans had, Michi fumbled the ball.
Yeah.
Only able to get 3. Props to the Texans defense, was able to keep the game close. But it kind of comes back, we've been saying it all year. The Chargers don't have a dependable number 1 wide receiver. Is Ladd McConkey good? Yeah, but he's not a number 1 in this league. He's like a inside slot type of wide receiver. He's not the alpha outside A.J. Brown.
He's your hands guy. He's the hands guy, he's a complimentary guy when you have a couple others there, like you always point this out. Everybody's got to slot into their roles best, right? And something, you hit on quite often. We saw it yesterday. How many times when they needed a big play, we had a drop or Herbert wasn't able to connect with one of them. Even their running game that had been pretty solid against the bad teams, they weren't able against a better team to establish that run. Their offensive line struggled. Eric, you hit on that one too. You thought the offensive line injury that they had to Pickens was going to hurt. And it absolutely did. You can tell they really struggled as the game went on. And Herbert was under tons of pressure. He threw 4 interceptions. They weren't all his fault, but that's exactly what the Texans were trying to do. Just put him under pressure, make things difficult, and then you make him try to force it in to receivers who aren't quite at that level.
Yeah. And like Quentin Johnson was a 0 factor. It's just
Yep.
one of those things. Like they just don't have, obviously, this draft isn't as stacked as last draft, but they're going to definitely have to look wide receiver in the free agent market or in the draft. That's something they need to address.
There was one play that was kind of like a microcosm of what they really needed. It was 4th and 2. They're down 13 or they're down 10-6 with, in the third quarter. And 4th and 2, Herbert throws a short pass to Quentin Johnson, but he doesn't even get to the line. That's like one of those things where it's like, you're the receiver, you have to get to the first down marker. You got to make sure that you're there. And these are little things that like the top tier receivers would do. And you didn't see that yesterday from the Chargers. So the Texans will move on. They'll just kind of wait around to see who they play after some of the results today. Anything else you wanted to hit on that game?
No, I didn't understand why Michi was getting so much run.
I know.
That was really weird. I thought that was going to be Deontay Johnson.
That was like the Johnson role.
Yeah.
And maybe
he was their 4th wide receiver.
Yeah.
They were playing Robert Woods.
Bobby Trees, huh? Yeah.
And Michi had an awful drop, an awful INT. It's like, dude.
That's the kind of stuff that you're not going to have that margin for error when you step up the next round. Like they were lucky that they played a Chargers team who wasn't able to really put the ball into the end zone. Next week against a Bills or a Ray, against one of the better teams, the Texans have to be more efficient. They can't make turnovers like that repeatedly. Then we got to round 3 of the Steelers versus the Ravens. And early on, Ravens dominated. Just same sort of thing, I think, that we saw in game 1, where when you just sort of line up the playmakers from Baltimore versus from Pittsburgh, you just don't have as many on the Pittsburgh side. And when Pickens struggled down the stretch and he's been hurt, they don't have that real number 2 or anyone else to get the ball to. It wasn't like there was 1 or 2 drives where Pittsburgh in the second half felt like maybe the momentum was going to swing. They were down 14. They had the ball with the chance to cut it down to 7. And after that, Baltimore was able to just kind of run out the clock. So did anything really surprise you about that game?
The Steelers tried to address it in the draft. They drafted Roman Wilson from Michigan to be this number 2 wide receiver. He hasn't even played this year. I have no idea what happened.
Total wasted pick.
They definitely need something to going on there. There's a couple times their first drive, it was 4th and short. I probably would have gone for it just because you took the ball against the Ravens offense.
Yep.
You're on the road, you took the ball, you have a plan to score, and you punt on 4th and short. There was another time I thought they could have gone for it just with how the game was going. And I'm not the biggest go for a guy, so that kind of stood out for me. And Steelers defense, we've historically seen get stops, like just couldn't stop anything with this Ravens.
But they're running kind of like the option, right, to start. And do you think that it's something to do with last year and how in the playoffs they abandoned the run, and they've probably been hearing about that a lot?
No.
I just scheme-wise, matchup-wise.
I think it's because there's no Flowers.
Yeah, and you hit the middle of that's a good point. No Flowers, and you just kind of wear them down. You hit the middle of their defense, and it was nice to start. They were really confusing Pittsburgh a little bit too because they were running sort of that option where Lamar was able to keep. Then they were able to lean on Henry a little bit more. So
and they were biting hard.
I know.
Hard on the running back on the RPO. Really hard.
I mean, Lamar was just keeping because he had so much space in front of him each and every time. So Ravens get the victory. They beat Pittsburgh twice this year. And I guess like if you're Pittsburgh, I'm not saying obviously Tomlin overachieves a lot. I think this team's over under this year was 7.5. And on paper, it looked exactly like what happened. Like, it looked like they were going to have a really tough schedule at the end of the year. So with a team like that, even a team like the Chargers, it's tough when the last game of the year you get beat up and it leaves a bad taste in your mouth. But the Chargers shouldn't have really gone any farther than this year. That was as far as they should go. That was probably a good season for them, overachieving, getting to the playoffs. I think the same thing for Pittsburgh. You just sort of feel bad about it because the last part of your season, you kind of get your ass kicked, and that's not really you don't think of it positively right then. But when a week or two now and you take the big picture look, it's like, oh, Pittsburgh only supposed to win 7.5 games. They won 10, but this is the same thing every year for them, right? They get to this point and then they can't get over the hump. Do they got to go get a young quarterback? What is the move for them? Because Tomlin's a good coach. He gets fired, someone else is going to go get him, but he's one of those players, rally the troops guys, not necessarily an X's and O offensive coordinator type, great mind guy.
Wilson and Fields, their contracts are up.
Right.
So obviously, quarterback, what are you going to do? This draft class, to say it's down on quarterbacks would be
an understatement, right?
So that leaves to the free agent market. What free agent do you really want to go out there and kind of make a splash for? Because I'm really not seeing nothing unless there's like a surprise one. Garoppolo looked good, but do you really want to go Jimmy?
You're going to go trust him?
To me, the thing that would make the most sense, but I doubt that they do it. I thought Milton from the
Patriots, he was very good.
You can probably get him for the cheap, probably third, fourth round pick, make the trade, get him. Now, Najee Harris and Jalen Warren are both gone. They're both free agents. So I would probably bring back Warren because you can get him a little bit cheaper. He brings a little bit more in the passing game, a little bit more better of a blocker. And Najee Harris, really, he's just been Mr. Consistency, constantly getting the most unimpressive 1,000 yards year after year after year. And he's going to want a little bit more because he was a first-round draft pick. And so you sign Warren, and then you have to get a wide receiver number 2.
Because you've got plenty of money to do so, right?
And you can go receiver class this year in the draft is pretty good. I mean, there's some pretty good. They got the kid from Missouri. I think Hunter's going to play DB. The kid from Arizona, the kid from Ohio State. So there's some good wide receivers here that when the Steelers draft, they could pick.
Pick one and maybe even get another guy in free agency. You know what I mean? Like,
kind of, if I was in charge of the Steelers, I would trade for Milton, sign Warren, and bring and then draft a wide receiver.
And you get someone else as your backup. That's like I just not saying him particularly, but someone in the like Minshew, maybe like solid backup where you're probably not going to have them start, but at least you got a guy there like that. That's a veteran backup behind a guy like Milton. I like that though. You got to be a little creative if you're Pittsburgh because you see everybody else around you. And it is kind of funny. I was listening to somebody who made the comparison. Like, I'm not saying the college football, like Final Four quarterbacks were bad, but just comparing them to the NFL quarterbacks where these are the top quarterbacks, best players in the league. Like, you can win without having that stud quarterback a lot more in college than you can in the NFL. You need that guy. You need one of the guys that's the top third of the league, or else you're just probably not going to have an opportunity there when you look at all the quarterbacks that are still standing right now. So they got to go find that guy somewhere. Let's get to a couple comments, Eric, and then we'll preview today's games. Bobby Thomas mentions Texas Tech yesterday. They were brutal. Is that a game that you had that you played?
Oh, they're up third. They were hosting Iowa State, who was third in the country. Up 13 in the second half. Had a 91 and 92% free throw shooter split.
Oh my gosh.
Split free throws. Iowa State comes down, makes a layup at the end to force overtime. And then at the end of OT, they had like an 80% guy split a pair. And then Iowa State came down and scored. So they're down by 1. The same guy that split a pair drove and missed a bunny to win it. I mean, there's just so many things that like
had to go against you to lose that one, right?
They're like they're top 20 shooting free throws. They're the team you want in a game like that because historically, percentage-wise, they're going to make free throws. They just didn't do it.
Sports Facts was pointing out right here some of the things that you just mentioned. Yeah, the free throws, the 90%er missing free throws, missing layups, and just what you said, Bobby Thomas was right there with you. Was brutal. Hey, we had a George Pickens sighting. Yeah, he had a catch in the game, kind of like a non-threatening late score. What was his prop last night? I was asking about. Yeah. No clue on Pickens. And then, hey, Cool Kev, thank you so much for checking in. Eric, I do want to give you a shout out too. Actually, yesterday, after you and I went through all the football games, you threw out a UFC play that ended up winning. And somebody asked for a Tampa Bay Downs play. That horse actually ran second and then got put up to first via DQ. Naughty rascal. So we had the winner of the race, and we had the UFC winner that you gave me a nice. Was it 7-1?
6-1.
6-1, yeah. So, and two of my buddies also jumped in on that one too, because they're bigger USC fans than me. So I passed it along. Thank you, Eric. Let's get to today. Broncos at the Buffalo Bills. This number has ticked down a little bit. Buffalo is an 8-point favorite here. So you've got the Broncos who come into this game. They beat the backups for KC 38-0. And first, before I kind of go negative, I'll give positives, and I'll do so for both teams. I mean, this team had zero expectations coming into the year, Eric. They had one of the lowest totals on paper. Going through their schedule, it was hard to find wins because you just didn't know what to expect from them coming off of the disaster that was last year. But I'll give Sean Payton credit, someone who I've critiqued. They had Bo Nix ready, first-year quarterback. They completely changed from last year when defensively they were miserable. They were a much more solid team this year. He had 34 offensive touchdowns. That's the third most ever for a rookie in NFL history. They took a $53 million dead cap hit after Wilson. And then they draft a rookie, not only a rookie, like one of the lower of all of the other picks. He was basically the last quarterback left on the board. Yep. Like you're the last man standing. So it wasn't even like you got your choice. They just made the best of that situation. Eric, 1-7 though, with a negative 37-point differential against teams with a winning record before that Chiefs game. So, I'm hem and haw a little bit with them because there were a couple of those games that they kept close. They were in those games. They covered some of those games, but weren't able to win those games. The one against the Chiefs, for example, they should have beat them that first time when they missed the field goal at the end and they drive the ball all the way down and they're only down by 2. So defensively, I think that's a key for them. Can they slow things down? And then offensively, what would you like to see from Denver? Because you locked them in with a better number earlier in the week, right?
No, I'm on Buffalo here. I got Buffalo.
Okay, yeah, we were both on the Buffalo side. I wasn't sure. I didn't remember exactly here to go here.
I got Buffalo here. I put Buffalo in at minus 8.5. I gave this one on my show earlier in the week. Quarterbacks making their first playoff start versus a quarterback with playoff experience. 1937-1 ATS. That's 34%. Significant disadvantage for these inexperienced quarterbacks. 7th seed in the playoffs. Now look, they're 3-5, but of the 5 of the 8 losses have been by 12 or plus points. Teams laying 8.5 points or more in the wild card round since 2010. 67% ATS, 28.2% ROI. Home favorites laying 8.5 or more, 77%, with an ROI of 47.9%. Rookie quarterbacks historically struggle on the road. The last one to get a straight-up win, Russell Wilson in 2013. You mentioned it with the Broncos, 1-7, negative 37 on point differential on the road. Van Joseph's defense historically struggles defending the middle of the field. That's where Khalil Shakir thrives. He leads the Bills in targets, receptions, and yards. Bills red zone. They're second this year in the NFL in red zone efficiency. When I'm laying a big number, this is something key I look for. Bills run a run-heavy zone. We look at Nix. This is the key. He is 31st in yards per pass against zone, 25th in success rate, 24th EPA against zone, and he has thrown more interceptions against zone this season. So we have all the trends that say to take this, and in the Styles matchup with how the Bills are going to play, Nick struggles. And Shakir, that's who Allen looks for. Great matchup. So I'm on the Bills here, minus the 8.5. I hate laying big numbers like these, but if you're going to take big numbers, the wild card round is the round to do it in.
Some of the things that the Bills or the Broncos do well, too, they led the league in sacks. They had 63. Well, Josh Allen never gets sacked. He has the lowest sack rate with just 2.6%, and then the fourth lowest interception rate. So for a big favorite here, they haven't turned the ball over a lot this year. They've been very efficient. They've been really clean with the ball too. They've scored 30 points 12 different times this year. I just don't know if the Broncos can stop them enough and score enough with them. The Broncos have the third highest percentage of drives that ended in 3 and outs this year, 26%. So more than a quarter of the time they're 3 and out. And you just can't do that against teams like the Bills. They're also 20th in time of possession. We've seen what the Bills can do. They can run the ball a lot better this year with not Josh Allen, right? With Cook, they have some options. So when they're doing that and they're moving the ball right at you, they're just really, really tough. Eric, yesterday, got me a Rashad Bateman first-time touchdown. How about that? Had that one at plus 700. He gets the first score for the Ravens there. Who do you go to for the first time TD in this game?
I played the chalk. Just give me Cook plus 570.
That's exactly who I had to. I think it's going to be Cook early on. I think it's the handing off to Cook. I do have a play in this game for Boob Fantasy. It's going to be Bo Nix rushing yards. I'm going to go over 29.5. I think with these quarterbacks, especially on the teams that are like the underdogs, late in the game, you're down, you're probably going to see these guys running a little bit more too. What do they say in The Water Boy? Last game of the year, can't hold anything back. I think you'll see some of those guys like a Bo Nix down a little bit, trying to pick up some yardage late. In his last 2 games, when the stakes were the highest, 7 carries, 47 yards, 7 carries, 31 yards. So I think you're going to see something like that where he's going to be in the 30 range. So we're both on Cook for the TD. And anything else you want to hit on this game, Eric?
Oh, no. I don't want to be robbed of a Bills-Ravens playoff game.
Next round, right?
I don't want to be robbed of that.
Yeah, so we deserve that. Bills-Ravens could be awesome. Let's see if the Bills can cover the big number today. Number is at 8. We move to the Packers at the Eagles. Eagles are a 5.5-point favorite in this game. Packers made the playoffs for the 5th time in the last 6 years. This is a rematch of the Week 1 game in Brazil. Watson is out, right?
Watson is gone.
So, and I'll say he's not like a high volume receiver, but that will just give them a couple extra targets for the Packers that would normally be going to Watson. Love not necessarily 100%. Which team is going to show up? Team that had 5 straight weeks of 30-plus points, or the team that's 2-5 against playoff teams? They'll have to slow down the run because they are 8th in defensive rushing EPA, so that could really help them. They rank top 5 in rushing yards per game and in total takeaways. 2 of the things they're going to lean on if they are able to win a couple games here. So, Eric, Eagles, Packers. I think earlier in the week when we talked, you were more on the Eagles side, right? Or you were more on the Packers side, right? Plus the number.
Yeah, I'm more on the Packers side. You know, Hurts is coming back. What is his rhythm going to look like? Some people are saying this is a Sirianni mind game. The thing with concussions, if you're not done out of the protocol right away, this lingers on. Now, is this a Sirianni mind game? I had one guy tell me that he could have played last week if needed. I don't know. Eagles offensive, look, they're going to look to control the clock. They're going to look to run the ball. And this is the matchup. Packers run defense, 7th this season DVOA in the run, allowing 99 yards per game. But when they played a top 10 rushing attack per DVOA, they were only allowing 114 yards per game. If the Eagles want to win this game, they need to have more than 114 yards. So I think the Packers are going to be able to limit this, because where do you attack? They're going to be able to take away the run. And then they're going to look, Hurts is going to look to throw to the outside, which the Packers are good defending. Their struggles are the middle of the field, which Hurts really doesn't look to target. Now, is Moore going to come out with a game plan? Hey, let's get Galbert involved because he's in the middle? Maybe, but he hasn't done it all season. Why is he going to change it now? This is a great spot to back Matt LaFleur. ATS 25 and 14 overall in revenge spots during the season. 9-2 on the road. And then we need to look at the body of the work. The Eagles' second easiest schedule this season. So we need to remember when looking at this, that means their stats and all these analytic stuff, all these metrics we're looking at are a little bit inflated. Also, Hurts struggles covering these larger numbers, anything over a field goal. Look, I got LaFleur, who's one of the better coaches in the league against the number as a dog and in revenge spots. I think that the Packers are going to be able to stop the run. And I think there's a huge coaching advantage with the Packers, LaFleur against Sirianni. And I think this number is a little inflated when people are looking, hey, the Packers lost the Bears. So I'm going to take the Packers here. I got them at 5.5.
Yeah, I'm on the Packers side too. And one of the things I'm going to look to target without Watson, Tucker Kraft over the middle of the field, I think could be a really nice spot for them. Because when you talk about the Eagles, they're pretty well balanced, but that's one of the best places to try to hit a good defense where there's a little bit of space there. You get a guy like Kraft, his over-under for receiving yards on Boom Fantasy was 35.5. He's gone over this number 5 of the last 6 games. The only time he didn't, he had 34 yards. So he was just below it. And now you have no Watson. So I think just a few more targets to someone like a Kraft. I'm going to go over the 35.5 yards there for Kraft. So we're both on the Packers side. Anything else you want to hit on this game, Eric?
My first TT is I did Kraft 16-1 for my first touchdown bet in this one.
Okay, so I had 2 possibilities for first-time touchdown here. I mentioned Kraft as the one, and then I think other one I would also give a look. I think I'm going to go both tight ends. I might sprinkle a little bit on both of the tight ends here because, like you said, for Philly, that would be a really good spot to attack if they can do it. If they're able to do it, it's just not the way that they normally play. So I'm going to go sprinkle a little bit on both tight ends. Let's make some money when he's talking about Watson. Are you talking about Deshaun Watson or Kristen Watson? Because we saw the Deshaun Watson injury now too, Eric, right? And he's out for a whole nother year.
Yeah, and there's some TikTok video where he doesn't have his brace on. He's doing a little dance with his girl. So I don't know.
Yeah, who knows there. Eric, we'll get to this too before we get to our next football game Sunday night. Do you have any college hoops plays for today that you want to toss out?
I did too. I got Penn State plus 2.5 against Oregon and Colorado plus 1.5 against West Virginia.
Couple college basketball plays for you there from Eric. Let's dive in, Eric, to Sunday Night Football. We've got the Washington Commanders at the Tampa Bay Bucks. Tampa is a 3-point favorite in here. They beat Washington in week 1, which was Daniel's first start. Bucks started 4-6 this year. One point, they had a 4-game losing stretch in the middle of the season, but they still end up with 10 wins. And both years since Brady's gone, they win the NFC South with Baker. Baker was 0-41 in games when he had trailed by 10 points, but he come back last week with their season on the line. They were down by 10 multiple times. They have the only offense since 2000 to hit all of these marks. 28 points per game. They had 28.6. They averaged 6.2 yards per play, 65% red zone touchdown rate, and they had over a 50% third down conversion rate. I just don't think a lot of people understand how good this offense has been this year. Eric, they've been really, really good. And a couple of their key pieces are guys that I actually have in my my boom. And I actually started it off positively yesterday. Let's see. I think I got it up here. So I had the Bateman over the touchdown. So that one's live. I've got Bucky Irving and McMillan today on the Tampa Bay side to try to close this one out. And those have been 2 of their real big, like, second half of the season. They've been 2 of the massive pieces on their team because Godwin got hurt. So they didn't really have the Godwin-Evans combination. Otton was someone that Baker was leaning in on. And then Otton got hurt. So out of nowhere, McMillan sort of becomes one of their real key pieces. Last 5 games, he's had 7 touchdowns for McMillan, just making huge plays. Bucky Irvin, since week 10, he's averaging 87 plus rushing yards per game and 27 yards receiving, which is incredible for Bucky Irving as a rookie. And he's not really getting talked about with some of the real solid rookies. But I think the perception of this Bucs team isn't quite where they are. Like, I think they're just a little more potent than people realize. And Eric, I'm nervous about the Washington defense trying to stop them, because last week Washington had a tough time stopping Trey Lance. Yeah. He led the Cowboys to 378 yards and they had 0 turnovers. The Cowboys with Trey Lance got into the red zone 6 times, and they have the lowest ranked run defense of any playoff team, and they were 3rd from the bottom in yards per carry this year. So to me, matchup wise, I think Washington would prefer an offense that wasn't so good, because they don't have the defense that really seems like they can slow them down a little bit here. Talk to us about how you feel about this game.
So I have 2 bets in this one. The first one, I'll get to the side. I did the Bucs -3. Again, rookie quarterbacks, 1937-1 ATS first. No, that's when a quarterback playing a quarterback with no playoff experience. Flip side, rookie quarterbacks in the playoffs since the merger. So that's a pretty big time, 37% against the number. Commanders only beat one playoff team this season, the Eagles, without Hurts, who left the game early with an injury, with a concussion. And they were going to lose that game if Smith made the catch. Devontae Smith had that bad drop. 10-2 in one-score games. Obviously, that's a lot of variables, a lot of luck on that. They are 20 for 23 this year on 4th downs. That is the best in NFL history. They're obviously due for some 4th down regression. Commanders DVOA 23rd overall, 20th defending the pass, 23rd defending the run. Per PFF, 29th defending the run, 27th in coverage. They struggle against running backs. You mentioned Bucky Irvin. They allow the 5th most rushing yards per game to running backs, 22nd DVOA defending wide receiver ones. Now, look, I know everyone's going to say, well, Lattimore's back. One of my friends made this thing to me. He goes, to be a good cornerback, you need to have one good season, and then everyone thinks you're mysteriously good. And that's kind of what Lattimore is good, because he really hasn't done anything the last couple of years. And on top of that, he hasn't been playing since
he's been hurt.
He got to Washington. And you mentioned the Bucs offense, 7th overall DVOA, 5th best DVOA passing, 8th best rushing. Bucky Irvin, he set up for success against a weak.
Well, and if, let's just say, for example, Lattimore is able to neutralize Evans a little bit, that's going to open things up for the 2 guys that I just mentioned, McMillan and for Bucky Irvin, who's been really good catching passes out of the backfield. They just have a lot of weapons that aren't like well known to the mainstream quite yet. And this feels like a game where it could be like a real coming out party for them. That kind of like what Tampa did last year in the first round of the playoffs, where
they just
beat up the Eagles.
Yeah. Commanders rely heavily on the run game. Bucs 6 DVOA defending the run. They have my boy Vita Vea in the middle, and we've seen when their offense can't get the running game going, it struggles. Coleman and Alorati on the left side in particularly have been bad. I think the Bucs are going to be able to get some pressure on that side. Todd Bowles is one of the best defensive minds in the games. Jaden Daniels, great rookie year, but he only throws to one side of the field. Bowles isn't an idiot. He's going to be able to take that away. And when we mentioned the Commanders defense, Kenny Pickett, Marcus Mariota, and Trey Lance all lit up this defense. Now you're facing one of the better defenses this year in the league. It makes all the key sense in the world. So I did it. I did the -3. And then I also did Austin Eckler over 18.5 receiving yards. Bucs give up the 5th most receiving yards to opposing running backs, 38 per game, 28th DVOA defending opposing running backs in the passing game. Eckler has gone over this 2 of his last 3 games, 8 of his last 12. Last game against the Bucs, 4 for 52. I expect them to have a positive game script with him with trailing, so he's going to be getting more of the run than Brian Robinson, who's mainly the running back in there during run situations. And I think they're going to take away Stary Carey. So I think Eckler is going to be more heavily involved than people realize. So I did over 18.5 for Austin Eckler.
Austin Eckler there for Eric. Yeah, the first-time touchdown for me in this game, Eric, I'm going to throw in a little bit downfield. So this year, Baker Mayfield, coming off of his last game, Baker Mayfield had 75 yards scrambling, which was more than any game in his career. He had 3 first downs on the ground. He had career highs this year in scramble yards and in first downs. He was tied for 4th among all quarterbacks. I could see early in the game, Baker pumped up, excited, out running a few extra yards, diving into the end zone for a touchdown. Give me Baker Mayfield plus 2,800 for the first time tutty here. Give me the bake show. This is totally narrative driven. This isn't as much about like running quarterbacks against this team, but Baker is one of those guys that the teammates love him. They rally around him. I could see him diving in, getting all pumped up, slapping guys on the ass as he runs back down. Give me Baker. Cook it up for me, Baker. First time TD plus 2,800. How about for you, Eric?
I just did chalk again. I just did one Bucky Irving.
Yeah, he makes the most sense. He makes the most sense in this one for sure. So we're both on the Bucs side there. Eric, anything else you want to hit on before we move to Monday?
Nope.
Let's get to Monday Night Football. We've got the Rammies hosting a game against the Minnesota Vikings. Now, remember, this game is now in Arizona. It has been moved there because of the fires in Southern California. Yesterday seemed like it was getting a little bit better, but we still have cancellations of a lot of things. Santa Anita canceled their racing. Lakers and Clippers canceled their games through the weekend. Hopefully back playing again on Monday. So we'll keep our fingers crossed, and we'll keep praying and saying positive, thinking positive things for everyone out there dealing with the fires. But the Rams and the Vikings, talk about like a roller coaster of the last couple of weeks for this Vikings team. They had this huge game against Green Bay a few weeks ago. They're up big. Green Bay comes all the way back, but Minnesota's able to hold on. Then against the Lions, it's being billed as like the game of the year, the football game of the century. It's a little bit closer at halftime than people probably remember. And then they just got their butts kicked in the second half by Detroit, who really wore them down, who outcoached them, who was just better overall. You have a strong opinion in this game, one way or the other, Eric?
So I did 2 bets. The first bet is, look, I did your Rams at 2. Vikings were playing for the 1 seed. Now they find themselves as road favorites, an emotional letdown spot after such a high stakes game.
Yep. Again,
quarterbacks first start against a quarterback with playoff experience, 34% ATS. Road favorites in the playoffs only cover 41% of the time. Chargers were a road favorite last night, and the game got away from them. Vikings' ability to pressure the quarterback is going to determine the game. Stafford under pressure this season, 2 TDs, 6 INTs. But without pressure, 18 touchdowns, 2 INTs. When they played the first time, the Vikings didn't have a sack. So if Stafford has a clean pocket, this is going to be good. And I really think what they're going to look to keep him clean is the same thing they did last week, is quick passes out of his hands. We saw Goff do this with the Lions. Short passes, get the ball out of his hands quickly. Also, the Rams, 3rd best defense preventing opponents from scoring in the red zone. Vikings rank bottom half in the league in red zone scoring efficiency. Vikings did lose Jones, the offensive lineman, against the Lions. I think that's going to be a big thing for him. And, when we just kind of look for it, it's got to be the mental aspect. I know I'm a big buying low, selling high guy, but again, these guys are people. You know what I mean? Like, you just went from playing from the 1 seed, home field advantage, to just completely shitting the bed. Because what O'Connell activated Daniel Jones. He activated Daniel Jones. You don't think that has to be in the back of Sam Darnold's head? Okay, this guy's been on the playoffs, been on our practice squad for 5-6 weeks. And now I just had the worst game of my life, of my season. And now you're activating this guy who has a playoff victory. Like, I don't know, man. Like,
they were unlucky in that normally when you're a 14-win team, the last game of the year doesn't matter for you. You're not playing a big game, losing a big game, and then going right into the playoffs. That almost never happens the way that it was for them to have such a good year and then get your butt kicked right before. And like you said, now you're kind of dealing with the mental gymnastics. Like, you didn't have the chance to go back and test some things out the next week and see if they worked, make your adjustments quite yet. I think at this number, at any dog number, I'd be on the Rams side too, because one, we saw the matchup with them earlier in the year. We saw how the coaching styles and what McVay knows about O'Connell, they were able to really like limit the Flores pressure on the quarterback there too. It just seemed like a really good matchup all year or in that game. And I wonder if there's something about that, especially with the scheme. So let's get to a couple of our comments, Eric, and then you and I will hit our touchdown
I
prop.
Player prop in this real quick.
Hit your player prop.
I also did Cooper Kupp over 44.5 yards receiving. Earlier this season, he had 5 for 51 against the Vikings defense. Flores, who's the DC of the Vikings, he admitted post-game that they weren't prepared for Puka Nacua. They didn't think Puka was going to play that game, which leads me to think he's going to bracket coverage, roll coverage over there, look to take him away. I'm feeling this is going to open stuff up for Cooper Kupp. Kupp's ability to dominate in the quick passing game, which I think they're going to implement here. So I just like the over 44.5 here for Cooper Kupp.
Thinking about a first-time tutty prop in that game. Do you have anyone that jumps out to you that you're looking at?
I did Puka plus 850.
Puka plus 850 in the Rammies game. Rammies versus the Vikings. I will go for the first-time touchdown. I'll go Aaron Jones. I'll expect that the Vikings will have to be focused and play better to start the game. I think it might be later in the game where they sort of wear down a little bit. So I'm going to go Aaron Jones for the first time tutty. Aaron Jones is plus 650. So I'm at plus 650. Eric's at plus 700 with Puka Nacua. Getting to some of our other Northwestern over MSU. That's one. And I saw this one too. The Rams and Vikings are moved to a stadium named after an insurance company that's pulling policies from homeowners affected by fires. That's a whole nother podcast, but I know it's just talk about irony, right? That's unbelievable. Yeah, I was talking about this. Yeah, there's a lot of bad, like wrong or bad or weird information going out, but unfortunately what happens now, more and more homes that are in places that are like close to the oceans, close to beachfront, they're not getting insured as much because the insurance companies know that those places are ripe for natural disasters. So exactly what happened. They're kind of like, it's awful cycle. How about the Seahawks? That's another team, right? 10 wins and not making it. Feel like you had a good year, but you still couldn't get the job done. Do you make any adjustments if you're them, Eric? Or do you feel like we still had a pretty good year? This is probably about as far as we were supposed to get. I think they were another team that like their over-under was in that same range, 7.5-ish.
Yeah, and the weird thing is I know people are like Ryan Grubb was the scapegoat. It's really weird. You look and you see someone overall offense in the top 13, pass offense, top 13, rushing offense, top 13. You know what, dude? Sorry, you're out of a job.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fine. He's going to go to Alabama. He's friends with DeBoer, who's the coach there. They coach together at Washington. He'll be fine. But I mean, it's just a pure scapegoat. I mean, I think they definitely should have run it back. Obviously, they're in a hole. What do they do with Geno Smith? I mean, that's another thing. Like, where's Geno going to go? Are they going to look to pivot? Interesting times, but you know, Mike McDonald he's a run-first coach. He's a defensive coach. So, I mean, I guess the move kind of makes sense to get rid of Grubb, who's looking to air it out, but. Yeah, I'm not a big fan.
A couple other things to hit on before we get to our boom fantasies. Don't forget, folks, every time you're playing Gulfstream Park, they've got another card coming up today. Head to shop.drf.com, past performances, DRF picks, clocker reports. Eric, I got the call yesterday. They called to the bullpen. I'll be heading out to Gulfstream Park for the Pegasus Day in 2 weeks. So I'll be going out there live to do some work. I've never been to Florida. I've never been to Gulfstream Park. So I will be there in a couple weeks for their big Pegasus Day. Let's get into our boom fantasy lineups. I showed you all this one from yesterday. So I'm alive in this with Bucky Irving and McMillan still to come for later on today. Eric, here is a look at your boom fantasy lineup for Sunday into Monday.
Yeah, I like the Shakir matchup. I mean, it's an insane price. That 3.03x. I think Eckler is going to go over the 22.5, and I think it's a great matchup for Kupp. Those watching, also that QR code that's flashed up on the screen, if you just put your phone up to that right now, it will take you right to our link to sign up for it.
So make sure you use that QR code right there. It'll take you and set you all up for Boom Fantasy. Here's mine for this week. I had mentioned these throughout some of the analysis. I went to both of the rookie quarterbacks rushing yards because both of these teams I feel like will be down, and I could see late in the game those guys needing to pick up first downs with their legs. So Daniels, I went over the 51.5 rushing yards. With Bo Nix, I went over the 29.5. With the Packers, no Watson there. I think a few more looks for Kraft. And that's been a number that Kraft has already been over 5 of his last 6 times. The only time he didn't hit 35.5, he was at 34. And now a little bit more to go around for Kraft. So Boom Fantasies, same thing for mine. If you just put the phone up to the QR code, it'll take you right to Boom Fantasy. You can set yourself a lineup up and you can get some action for today. Eric, anything else you want to hit on before we get out of here?
Good luck in your bets, and we'll be back Saturday because there's Saturday games.
Yep, Saturday games next week. Eric will join me during the week on my show at some point to kind of recap a little bit of what happened and get you all set up for next week again. So we wish you all the best of luck. Super Wildcard Weekend rolls on. 4 more games between Sunday and Monday. Crush it.